In the sixth inning, Norm Cash, who was a batting champion at one time, came up, no hit going, and Ryan striking out one batter after another. He had a one-strike count on him before the umpire realized that Cash had gone back in the clubhouse, taken a leg off a table, and was up at home plate with a table leg. And the umpire finally, with one strike on him, said, "Cash, you can't be up here without a bat." And he said, "I'm not going to hit him anyway. What difference is that?" And he didn't.
AE was nuts, but that is exactly why Detroit could not stop watching Norm Cash. He could hit a baseball as far as almost anyone alive. He made grown men laugh in the middle of a serious game. He cheated, he joked, and he broke nearly every rule he could find. And yet his own teammates loved him for it. So how did one funny first baseman drive the whole sport a little wild? Well, the answer is stranger than you think. Let me show you, one story at a time. I'm Mason, and this is Baseball Icons. And as this story gets stranger, give this video some hype if you want more baseball stories where the truth sounds almost too weird to be real. Detroit loved this man, who packed Tiger Stadium, were auto workers, brewers, and teamsters. They worked hard all week, then they came to the park to watch a big Texan smile and swing. Cash played like a country singer, having fun. He was loud, he made the game feel like a party. People called him a folk hero, and they meant it. Them, he was one of their own. He came from nothing, just like many of them. He had worked with his hands long before he ever swung a bat for money. He did not act like a fancy star. He acted like a guy who would tell you a joke and mean it. That is why they kept coming back, win or lose. But there was another side to Norm Cash. The years after he stopped playing, he told a magazine a secret. He said he had cheated. He said he hollowed out his bats and filled them with cork. He even joked about his hollow bats like it was all one big gag. For a man so loved, that was a strange thing to admit. It made people laugh. Then it made them wonder, was the joke on baseball itself? That is the puzzle of Norm Cash. He was funny, kind, and gifted. He could also bend rules, ignore his managers, and turn a serious game into a comedy show. He frustrated pitchers, he confused umpires, he gave his bosses headaches, and still, the legends who played with him smile when they say his name. That is what makes him so hard to figure out. A cheater is easy to boo, a clown is easy to ignore, but a cheater and a clown who could also rake, and who everyone seemed to love, that is a true riddle. So why did this beloved man drive the whole sport wild? Let me count it down for you. The number 11, the strange start of Storm and Norman. To understand the chaos, you have to start at the beginning. The Norman Dalton Cash was born on November 10th, 1933. His home was a tiny town in West Texas called Justisburg. The family farmed cotton. There was no easy money and no easy days. As a boy, Norm worked long and hard. He drove a tractor for many hours. He swung a heavy cotton hoe to clear weeds. That work built something special. It gave him thick, strong wrists. Family worked a farm that covered 250 acres. The days were long, and the sun was hot. Some days, young Norm drove that tractor for 12 hours straight. He pulled weeds with that heavy hoe until his hands ached. The most kids would have hated it. For Norm, that hard work quietly built a strong and tough young man. But here's the odd part. The baseball was not his first love. The football was. He went to high school in Post, Texas, and he was a star on the field. He was so good that he earned a college scholarship. He played for Sewell Ross State Teachers College in Alpine. There he became a top running back. In 1954, he set a school record with 1,255 rushing yards in a single season. He was tough, fast, and hard to bring down. The scouts noticed a young man who could run hard and take a hit. He was named an all-conference running back, one of the best in his league. For a kid from a cotton farm, that was a huge step up. He had found a way out through sports. Football skill got noticed. The Chicago Bears picked him in the 1955 NFL Draft, all the way down in the 13th round. That is a big deal. A poor farm kid from Texas was now wanted by a pro football team. But Norm did not chase the spotlight. He made a cold, smart choice. Back then, the NFL did not pay well, and the work was not steady. He had also just married his high school sweetheart, Murda Bob Harper, in early 1954. He needed money that would last. So he turned the Bears down. He signed with the Chicago White Sox in May 1955. Think about what that tells you. Before he ever played a big league game, Cash already had a stubborn streak. He was built like a football player. He had the body of a man used to hard labor, And he had a mind that did not like being told what to do. He picked his own path for his own reasons. That habit never went away. It would follow him into every clubhouse he ever entered. The wild ride was just getting started. The number 10, the trade that made two teams look foolish. Cash made his big league debut on June 18, 1958, with the White Sox. They played the Boston Red Sox that day, but Norm did not get to play much. For the next 2 years, he sat on the bench. The team had another first baseman named Earl Torgeson ahead of him, so Cash had to wait and watch. It is hard to show what you can do when you never get to play. In 1959, the White Sox won the American League pennant. Cash was only a backup. He played in just 58 games. In the World Series, he got 4 chances to pinch hit. He failed to get a hit in all 4. He was a young man with talent and no room to use it. Then the trades began. In December 1959, the White Sox sent Cash to the Cleveland Indians. It was part of a huge 8-player deal. The main goal was to bring a star named Minnie Minoso back to Chicago. Cash was just a piece in the puzzle. He even had a 1960 baseball card showing him in a Cleveland cap. But here's the funny thing. He never played a single regular game for Cleveland. Imagine that for a second. A team traded for him, printed his picture on a card, and then shipped him off before he ever stepped on the field for them. The cash was being passed around like a spare part. Nobody seemed to see what he would become. The Cleveland's general manager was Frank Lane. People called him Trader Lane because he loved making deals. On April 12, 1960, Lane traded Cash to the Detroit Tigers. In return, Cleveland got a little-known third baseman named Steve Demeter. That was it. The whole baseball world was confused. Detroit's general manager, Rick Farrell, was so shocked by the offer that he asked Lane a strange question. He asked if Lane meant cold cash or Norm Cash. Almost sounded too good to believe. It was too good. The Steve Demeter played in only 4 more big league games and then faded away. The Norm Cash became Detroit's first baseman for the next 15 years. He grew into one of the most feared left-handed hitters in the league. The Chicago and Cleveland both had to watch him crush baseballs for over a decade. They had handed away a star for nearly nothing. Detroit's lucky break became everyone else's long headache. And the man at the center of it all did not seem to care one bit. The years later, people would call it one of the most lopsided trades the sport had ever seen. The one season that made no sense. The Detroit was the perfect home for Cash. The Tiger Stadium had a short right field porch, only 325 feet away. Cash was a left-handed pull hitter. That means he sent the ball flying to right field. The short porch was made for a swing, like his. In 1960, his first full year in Detroit, he hit 18 home runs and batted 286. That was a good year. Then came 1961, and the world stopped making sense. In 1961, Norm Cash had one of the strangest great seasons in baseball history. While the whole country watched Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle chase home run records, Cash quietly did something amazing. He won the American League batting title with a .361 average. He hit 41 home runs. He drove in 132 runs. He led the league with 19 3 hits. He reached base at a .487 clip. On the road, away from his friendly home park, he hit an even better .380. The OPS plus, a stat that measures total hitting, was a huge 201. Put that in plain terms, an average hitter sits at 100. Cash that year was more than twice as good as average. It was the kind of number that wins awards and fills highlight reels. Almost nobody reaches it, and Cash did it while the world looked the other way. It was the best season of his life, by far. Sadly, it would also become the season that haunted him. Let that sink in. He became the only left-handed hitter in 80 years to mix a 360 average with 40 home runs in 1 year. It was a dream season. It should have made him a hero forever, but it did the opposite. The next year, everything fell apart. In 1962, his average dropped from 361 all the way down to 243. That is a fall of 118 points. It was the largest percentage drop ever by a player who had just won a batting title. We're stunned. The writers were angry. They started to accuse him of getting lazy after his big win. They said he stopped trying. The cheers turned into doubts. Look at the years around 1961, and the gap is clear. In 1960, he hit 286 with 18 home runs. In 1962, he fell to 143, though he still hit 39 home runs. In 1963, he hit 260 home runs. Those were good years on their own. But next to 1961, they all looked small. This was the first big reason people lost their patience with Norm Cash. He showed everyone a level of greatness that he never reached again. He set the bar sky high, then walked right under it. For the rest of his career, his good years would look small next to that one magic season. It was a strange kind of problem to have. The most players would dream of one season like 1961. For Cash, that dream became a weight he carried. Every time he came to the plate, people wanted to see that hitter again. But that hitter only showed up once, and soon people would learn that the magic might not have been all real. The number 8. The hollow bats and the secret cheat. 20 years later, Cash finally explained part of the mystery. In 1981, he gave an interview to Sports Illustrated. In it, he made a bold confession. He said he had used corked bats during that famous 1961 season. He said he had cheated for much of his whole career. By then, his playing days were long over. He had nothing left to lose by telling the truth. So he just laid it out, plain and simple, almost proud of how clever he had been. For baseball fans, it was a shock. The batting champ had basically said the game was a little bit crooked. Here's how he did it. He took a solid ash bat. He drilled a hole several inches deep into the top of the barrel. He hollowed out the inside, then he filled the empty space with cork, sawdust, and glue. From the outside, the bat looked normal. Inside, it was a fake. This broke a clear rule, Rule 6, the 3A5, which says a bat must be one solid piece of wood. Yet in all his years of doing this, no umpire and no rival manager ever caught him. Now you might think a corked bat is a magic power. The truth is more complex. The modern tests by sports scientists show something surprising. The cork does not act like a trampoline. It does not add bounce. In fact, taking wood out makes the bat lighter, and a lighter bat can hit the ball with a little less force. The corked bat does not make the ball travel farther on average. That part is a myth. But the lighter bat still helps in another way. Because it weighs less, a hitter can swing it faster. He can also wait a tiny bit longer before he starts his swing. That extra split second is gold. It lets a hitter judge the pitch better. He can lay off bad curveballs and still catch up to hard fastballs. The trick did not give Cash more power. It gave him a quicker, smarter bat. That helps explain his year of the quick bat. Think of it this way. A heavy bat is slow to start and slow to stop. A light bat is quick and easy to control. When the pitch is hard to read, that quickness can be the whole difference between a hit and a miss. So even a tiny edge in time can turn into many more hits over a long season. Now here's the negative side. We cannot say the cork made his whole 1961 season. The science does not support that. But we can say something just as important. The Norm Cash admitted that he was willing to cheat. He broke the rules on purpose year after year. He fooled the umpires. He fooled the other teams, and he did it with a smile. To many people in baseball, that was hard to forgive. The numbers were real, and the man swung both with the same easy grin. And that grin is the key to the whole thing. He never seemed sorry. He talked about cheating the way some people talk about a good prank. To him, fooling the game was part of the fun. Men who ran baseball, that attitude was the real crime. Some fans wondered if his whole legend was a trick. Was the great hitter real, or just a man with a clever bat? The truth sits somewhere in the middle. He had real skill. He also had a secret edge. And he was happy to let people guess which one mattered more. The table leg at the no-hitter. If the corked bats showed his sneaky side, the next story showed his clownish side. It happened on Sunday, July 15th, 1973, at Tiger Stadium. The great Nolan Ryan was on the mound for the California Angels. He was throwing one of the best games of his life. He was close to his second no-hitter of the season. He had already struck out 17 batters. The Tigers could not touch him. The Ryan threw as hard as anyone in the game. The fastball was a blur. The batter after walked back to the dugout shaking his head. It was the kind of day where a hitter felt foolish even trying. By the bottom of the ninth inning, there were 2 outs. The 2 Tigers had just made outs before him. The one grounded out and one lined out. The whole stadium could feel the no-hitter coming. The crowd was loud and the pressure was high. The Norm Cash came up to bat. He had already struck out twice and grounded out earlier in the game. Like everyone else that day, he was helpless against Ryan. So he decided to have some fun instead. Cash did not bring a normal bat to the plate. He brought a wooden table leg. He had quietly unscrewed it from a table back in the clubhouse. He walked up holding it like it was a real bat. Then he turned to the umpire, Ron Luciano, and asked a serious question. He asked if Luciano was going to check his bat. Feliciano looked at the table leg and burst out laughing. He told Cash he could not use it. Cash had a quick reply. He said it did not matter, because he would not hit Ryan anyway. So Cash went back and got a real bat. He stepped in, took his swing, and popped the ball up to shallow left field. That outfinished Nolan Ryan's no-hitter. The crowd had just watched history, but they had also watched Norm Cash turn the final moment into a joke. The story grew even bigger over time. On the radio broadcaster, Ernie Harwell said Cash carried a piano leg. He got the detail wrong. The umpire and other witnesses all said it was a table leg. Either way, the stunt became a famous piece of baseball history. People still argue about what Cash was really doing. Some say it was just a harmless joke to ease the pain of losing. The others think it was a sly trick, a way to break Ryan's focus at the biggest moment. We may never know for sure, but years later, the story even turned up in cartoons and TV shows, which kept it alive for new fans. Here's why this drove people up the wall. Cash was facing one of the best games ever pitched. The right thing was to take it seriously. Instead, he made the whole sport feel like a comedy act. Some people loved it, but to baseball's old guard, it felt like he could not resist making the game about his own joke. Even a perfect performance by a rival could not stop Norm Cash from grabbing the laugh, the numbers, the base tricks, and the muddy balls. The table leg was not a one-time thing. Cash treated the whole field like a stage. He broke the normal rules of the game over and over, just to get a reaction. To Cash, the rule book was not a wall. It was more like a fence he could hop over whenever he felt like it. Umpires never knew what he would try next. Every game with Cash carried a little surprise. You never knew if he would play it straight or pull a stunt. Take the rain delay story. One day at Tiger Stadium, Cash was a runner on second base. Then a big storm hit, and the game stopped for a long time. When the rain cleared and the teams came back out, Cash did not return to second base. He walked over and stood on third instead. The umpire saw this and yelled to ask what he was doing over there. Cash said with a straight face that he had stolen third. The umpire asked when Cash said he stole it during the rain. Of course, you cannot steal a base while the game is stopped. But that was the joke. Then there was the rundown. In another game, Cash got trapped between first and second base. The fielders were about to tag him out. He had no way to escape, so he tried something silly. He stopped, threw up his hands, and yelled, "Timeout." There's no calling timeout in the middle of a play like that. The trick did not work, and he was tagged out. But the players and umpires could not stop laughing. Cash also bent the rules to help his own pitchers. When a clean ball got hit into the dirt, he would sometimes hide it. Then he would toss a different ball back, one covered in mud. A muddy ball is harder for a hitter to see and track. It gave his pitcher a secret edge. It was small, sneaky, and against the spirit of fair play. And he had a stubborn streak about his uniform too. When the Tigers tried to put player names on the backs of their jerseys, Cash said no. He flatly refused to wear his. He said that if fans could not tell who he was, then that was their problem, not his. It was a stubborn answer, and very much like him. The most players just did what the team asked. Cash dug in his heels over something small. He liked the old way, and he would not budge. Add it all up, and you see the pattern. The Norm Cash saw the rules as soft suggestions. He turned serious moments into pranks. He helped his team in sneaky ways. He did things his own way and dared anyone to stop him. For umpires and rival teams, he was simply impossible to control. The late nights and the manager headaches. Off the field, Cash was just as wild. He gave his managers, men like Mayo Smith and Billy Martin, plenty to worry about. He lived hard. He drank a lot. He broke team curfews again and again. His favorite spot was a sports bar near Tiger Stadium called Lindell's A. In fact, he was known as the team's expert on the best bars in every city in the league. Though wherever the Tigers traveled, Cash seemed to know the best spot in town. The teammates joked that he had a map in his head of every late-night place in the league. The trouble was, all those late nights had a cost. The curfews were rules, and Cash treated rules like a dare. His roommate was the pitcher Denny McLain. The McLain had a famous line about him. He called Cash a modern medical miracle. He said Cash treated his body so badly with late nights that he should have given it to doctors to study. The McLain also said Cash could not make the team's 9-hooey. But here's where the story turns. For all his bad habits, Cash was no quitter on the field. He showed up every day wanting to be in the lineup. The McLean said Cash got madder than anything if a manager tried to sit him down. His teammate Alkaline remembered how tough he was. Cash played through real pain, including a stretch with a broken finger. He just wanted to be out there. The Cash also pushed others to play hard. The McLean said that if a player did not hustle, Cash or the catcher Bill Freehan would be the first ones to get in that player's face. Alkaline still smiles when people bring up Norm Cash because he was both funny and tough at the same time. There was a kind side to him, too. After Saturday afternoon games, Cash and other Tigers would visit local bars with big bags of baseballs. The players like Alkaline, Gates Brown, Jim Northrup, Earl Wilson, Dick McAuliffe, and Willie Horton came along. Children would line up outside. The players handed out free signed baseballs to the kids. If an adult tried to join the line, they were politely told the balls were only for children. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. Kids would remember that day for the rest of their lives. It showed that under all the jokes, Cash had a soft spot for the fans who looked up to him. He had his odd habits as well. He never chewed tobacco. Instead, he put exactly 5 pieces of bazooka bubblegum in his mouth at the start of every game. He even wore a special helmet covered in real tiger fabric with the Detroit emblem on it. That way he did not have to switch between a batting helmet and a cap, so you can see the problem a manager faced. The Cash was charming and tough and kind. But he was also a storm that needed managing every single day. His good heart did not erase the chaos. Someone always had to clean up the mess around him. And yet they kept him around, year after year.
Why?
Because when the game started, he could play. A manager will put up with a lot from a man who hits like Cash did. That is the deal stars get. The rules bend a little for the ones who win games. And Cash won plenty of them, so the leash stayed long. The noon promise and the lineup in a hat. Even when things made no sense, Norm Cash had a way of coming through. That made him even harder to handle, because you could never just give up on him. September 24th, 1966. The Tigers were in Minnesota. Because of a college football game that day, their game started very early, at 10:30 in the morning. Cash showed up with a bad hangover from the night before. The Tigers pitcher, Dave Wickersham, doubted that Cash could do anything useful, but Cash made him a bold promise. He said he would win the game at noon. It sounded like a joke. Right as the clock hit noon, Cash hit his 30th home run of the year. It was a 3-run blast and it helped Detroit win 8-1. He had called his shot, just like an old legend. His teammates could hardly believe it. He had been a wreck that morning. Then he stood up and did the one thing he said he would do. That was Norm Cash in a nutshell. When you counted him out, he found a way to leave you stunned. Then there was 1972. The Tigers were in a slump. They had lost 4 games in a row and 10 of their last 13. Their manager, Billy Martin, was frustrated. So he did something almost unheard of. Before a game against Cleveland, he picked his batting order out of a hat. He drew the names at random. The lineup made no sense at all. The Norm Cash, a power hitter who usually batted in the middle, was placed at leadoff. A light-hitting shortstop named Ed Brinkman was put in the cleanup spot, a place meant for sluggers. By any logic, it should have failed, but it did not. Cash got 2 hits off the great pitcher, Gaylord Perry. The Brinkman drove in the tying run and scored the winner. Detroit won the game 3-2. The whole batting order was a mess on paper. A defensive catcher, a utility infielder, and a pitcher all hit in spots that made little sense. But somehow the strange plan worked for one day. In the second game that day, the team went back to a normal lineup and lost 9-2. Still that odd win helped, and the Tigers later won their division by just half a game. This is the part that drove people up the wall in a different way. Even in pure chaos, Cash often helped his team win. A silly lineup did not stop him. A bad morning did not stop him. He kept showing up and producing. That made him almost impossible to punish, hard to bench, and hard to fully blame. When you wanted to be done with him, he would win you a game. That is the most maddening kind of player there is. If he had been useless, they could have let him go and moved on. But he was useful again and again, in the strangest ways. Though they were stuck with the chaos and the talent together. You could not have one without the other. The numbers that kept saving him. Whenever people got tired of Norm Cash, his stats came to his defense. The truth is, he was a very good player for a very long time. Over his career, he hit 377 home runs. He was also a fine fielder, not just a hitter. He led the American League in assists at his position 3 times. He had a strong career fielding mark of. He ranked 4th all-time in assists for a first baseman. He could pick the ball and make the play. The people often forget that part of his game. They remember the jokes and the cheating, but Cash worked hard with his glove. He took pride in playing first base the right way. That kind of fielding is not luck. It is skill built over many years. But his greatness came with a strange curse, and it goes back to 1961. Because he once hit .361, fans expected him to do it forever. So when he hit 25 or 30 home runs in a normal year, people called it a letdown. They booed him. Cash knew it too. He once said the only mistake he ever made was hitting .361 that one year, because after that, people always wanted more. So his numbers were a shield and a trap at the same time. They were good enough to keep him in the lineup and good enough to argue for the Hall of Fame. But that one perfect year made every other year look small. His talent gave him cover for all his wild behavior. Yet that same talent set a bar that turned fans against him. He could not win, even when he was winning. In the end, Cash never made the Hall of Fame. His numbers were close, but the voters passed. Maybe the cheating hurt him. Maybe the jokes made it hard to take him seriously. Maybe that one giant season raised the bar too high. Whatever the reason, he stayed on the outside, looking in. The mouth that got him in trouble? Detroit released Cash in August 1974. He was 40 years old, and the team wanted younger players. If 15 years in Detroit were over. But Norm Cash was not done finding ways to make people laugh and shake their heads. He kept playing ball for fun. In 1977 and 1978, he played pro slow-pitch softball for a team called the Detroit Caesars. That team was owned by Mike Ilitch, the man who started Little Caesars Pizza. Cash also moved into broadcasting. He worked as a game announcer for ABC's national baseball coverage in 1976. Later, from 1981 to 1983, he called Tigers games on local cable TV. But the same loose humor that worked in a clubhouse did not work on live TV. During a broadcast in Baltimore, Cash made a rude joke about the city. He said that local people had so little to do that they liked to go down to the street and watch hubcaps rust. It was meant as a wisecrack. The network bosses did not laugh. They fired him for it. It was a classic Cash moment. He said the first funny thing that came to mind, with no filter at all. In a bar with friends, that line would get big laughs. On live TV, it ended his job. He never quite understood the difference, or maybe he did and just did not care. He even popped up in a movie. In a 1978 TV film about his old teammate Ron LaFleur, Cash made a cameo. As he watched LaFleur run very fast, he made a dry joke. He said LaFleur could not be too fast because the police had caught him. It was a nod to the fact that LaFleur had been found and signed out of prison. This is the lesson of his later years. The jokes that made him a hero in the locker room became a problem in the wider world. In a clubhouse full of friends, his humor was charming. In a serious job, it was reckless. The same mouth that won over teammates kept getting him in trouble. He never learned to turn it off, and maybe he never wanted to. His mark on the game even reached the movies in another way. The years after he died, a famous comedy film honored him in a small, sweet way. In that film, a tough old cowboy helps a calf be born, and the calf is named Norman, a quiet nod to Stormin' Norman himself. It was a fitting tribute to a man who made people smile. Even gone, he was still making people grin. That was his gift in baseball and out of it. The stubborn end of a one-of-a-kind man? The last part of Norm Cash's story is sad, and it deserves care. In 1979, at the age of 45, he had a stroke. It hurt his ability to move, and it slurred his speech. He had to go through years of therapy just to get back on his feet. He fought hard, and by 1981, he was able to return to broadcasting. That took real strength. But even after such a scare, Cash would not change his ways. He kept living hard. He stayed the same stubborn man he had always been. That stubborn streak, the one that ran through his whole life, was about to lead to a tragedy. On October 11th, 1986, Cash took his boat out onto Lake Michigan. The boat was a 33-foot cruiser, and he had named it the Stormin' Norman after himself. He stopped at a place called Beaver Island. The wooden dock there was wet. As he stepped onto it, he slipped, hit his head, and fell into the cold water. His body was found the next morning. It was a quiet, lonely end for a man who had filled rooms with laughter. So we come back to the question we started with. Why did this funny, gifted man drive the whole sport wild? Now you know, he cheated with hollow bats and never got caught in his playing days. He turned a no-hitter into a joke with a table leg. He stole bases in the rain, yelled for timeouts and rundowns, and swapped muddy balls. He broke curfews and skipped morning workouts. He set a record in 1961 that made every other year look like a letdown. He could not stop joking, even when it cost him a job. And yet, here's the truth that holds it all together. His teammates still smile when they say his name. Al Kaline remembers the laughs. The fans in Detroit still call him their own. In a time when baseball wanted players to be quiet and serious, Cash showed there was another way. He was one of the first stars to play with this much personality and joy. The game is full of big characters today, and in a way, Norm Cash helped open that door. Because for all the chaos, he made baseball feel alive. He played with joy in a game that often forgot to have any. He was maddening, stubborn, and wild. He was also a real hitter, a kind man to a line of kids, and a friend his teammates could never forget. He was a lovable rogue. That is the only way to sum him up, part hero and part headache, but a man no one could forget. And baseball, for better or worse, has never seen another quite like Stormin' Norman.